Peace, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of On Tilt, State of Black Mental Health and Policing in America. I'm Julius, here with Miss Dannielle Brown. How you doing today?
Hey, Julius, I'm doing better.
Mm.
I'm recovering. Thank you so much for holding it down last week for me. It was an excellent show. I enjoyed watching it. Um, Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Sharice is amazing. She's a very well-versed clinician and just an even better person. So we missed you. We always miss you when you're not here, but you're always with us in spirit. So um, before we get started, we always like to take a moment of silence just to honor those who aren't with us. So please join us in a brief moment of silence. Thank you all. We appreciate y'all for joining us with that. So, Miss Danielle, we are wrapping up Mental Health Awareness Month. We've had a number of different mental health professionals on with us talking about the intersection of mental health and policing and Black mental health as well. And today we have three special guests coming on with us. We have never had three guests
No,
on
this
the show before.
will be our
So
first.
yeah, it's our first time. So we got three really phenomenal, just great mental health professionals. But again, like Sharice, they are even more amazing people. And with with live shows, I want to apologize. You probably hear my dog in the background. She's a little thirsty right now, so just bear with me with that. But we got three amazing Black mental health professionals. So first, we will bring on Miss Mary Ringgold. Mary is a phenomenal clinical mental health consultant. She does a lot of great work in the community. She supported our organization and our community members going through our program. So, Mary, if we want to bring Mary into the show. Second, we have brother Brandon Phillips. So Brandon Phillips is a school counselor. He's a father. He's a husband. He's active in the community. Very much an advocate for families and the overall wellness and holistic health of families, Black families in particular. And last but not least, the always phenomenal Jessica Gurley. She's a licensed clinical social worker, entrepreneur, facilitator extraordinaire. She has a mental health T-shirt line. Um, Goes to college campuses and does talks and seminars. So we've got some experts,
Yes.
some phenomenal humans with us today, and we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about
She's been on. I just want to say Jessica has been on our show before. If for some of our audience who have been following us, you may have remember her in the some shows back. She was excellent then. So, we're excited to have all of our guests here today.
Yeah, thank you all for making time. We appreciate y'all. So I know we kind of gave a little bit of an intro, but I do want to give y'all a chance to introduce yourselves. So if we could start with we'll start with you, Brandon, and Jessica and Mary. Just tell people a little bit about yourself.
So good afternoon, as you said, brother Julius. I'm a school counselor. My journey, working generally speaking, started working with teen fathers, and so I'm also extremely passionate and an advocate for early childhood. It's my belief that at the early childhood age, we're able to solve many of the world's problems, and if we can't solve them at that age, we're able to start solving them in a way that's inclusive of the little people, our children, our youngest and brightest minds, as well as their parents or caregivers. And so I trust that this time together this afternoon will allow me to learn, And I trust that our audience too will be informed as we share and engage in this dialogue about the experiences folks are having across America around Black mental health and policing.
Thank you, Brandon. Jessica?
Hi, everybody. So my name's Jessica, and I am a therapist, as Julius has said. And my goal and mission is to let everybody know about mental health and let them know that we all have mental health, but we all may not have mental illness, and kind of break that stigma and myths about mental health because it impacts us every single day. Our mental health speaks to whether we are well or not, and it impacts our relationships with one another, intimate relationships, business relationships, any relationship you can think of. Our mental health can have an impact on that. So my goal is to make better individuals, which ultimately will make better families and ultimately make better communities. And so I want to thank Julius and Dannielle for allowing me on the panel. I'm really looking forward to listening to everybody here today.
Thank you, Jessica. And Mary?
Hi, yes, I'm Mary Ringgold, and I am just excited to be here today with all you wonderful professionals. And I come from a background of mental health. I had 20 plus years of experience in the communities, in the schools, and I have watched how mental health and the stigma is actually has evolved over the years. You know, there was a time when Black people didn't even understand that Black people actually did therapy, counseling, and things of that nature. So I'm just excited to continue to help people and families develop and grow and work as hard on their mental health as they do everything else that they have going on in their life. So I appreciate you, Dannielle and Julius, for inviting me here. And as I said before, I'm excited to be here and to be a part of this discussion.
Thank you. Thank all y'all for those introductions. And Miss Dannielle, before we got started, you started to tell us a little bit about something that you recently participated in with some very special people. I think that would be a good place for us to kick this conversation off. You want to share a little bit about that?
Well, I had an amazing weekend in the Fort Lauderdale area of Florida. Sabrina Fulton, Trayvon Martin's mom, does this annual Circles of Mothers, in which she brings all the moms together, as many as she can. It's by invite. Of course, we can't, we have way too many mothers. That's why you hear me often say for the mothers when the camera's not rolling, because we have a lot of grieving mothers who lost their children to, police brutality, Black on Black crime, period, in the streets. It doesn't matter. Some of them even, while abroad in the service. Then, I met one mother whose son lost their son due to an injustice in the military. But she brings these mothers together. And some of these mothers you're familiar with. We were with Sandra Bland's mom. We was with Breonna Taylor's mom. Who else? I mean, so many mothers. Clark. Michael Clark. Is that Michael Clark? Out of California. You all remember him. You name them, they were there. Let me just say that. So many mothers were there. Ahmaud Arbery's mom, Wanda Cooper, who both of us are very close to each other. So a lot of mothers represented at this Circle of Mothers. And basically it was a seminar. Tamika Mallory was there. The list can go on. And, we had these sessions where we talked about grief, and we talked about, how you exist, as a mother, and as a mother in the movement, because a lot of these mothers are activists too. They were able to take their trauma and make it into, into triumph. where they literally have foundations and are bringing about changes and making changes within the law. As you can see recently, George Floyd, Ronald Green is in the media as of right now. So these mothers, even though they lost their children, behind the scene, they are still very much active. And it was so powerful with all of us coming together. And the number one topic, spearheaded by Sabrina Fulton, Trayvon Martin's mom, was mental health. And so, all of us have a background in mental health, and all of us here on this show know how important mental health is for the survival of our population, of Black mental health, of our Black community. We need it. We need to talk about it. It's too many layers to it. And hopefully having discussions like this, we begin to peel back some of those layers.
Thank you for that. So it sounds like you said, Miss Dannielle, mental health came up a lot during the conversations, and I heard you talking about grief and talking about loss and how that plays out when you're still trying to you're still grieving the loss of a loved one, and you're still trying to be an advocate and move the work forward and to try to make sure that this doesn't happen anymore, right? Trying to be as preventative and intentional about the actions and steps that you take, along with the other mothers and their families and people in their community. So I want to open it up to the group and ask for reflections on folks that are going through that grieving process, whether you are the mom, another family member, or a friend, because we've seen it in Pittsburgh too, right? We're seeing this uptick in particularly young Black boys and young Black girls, being shot and killed, and the community is trying to really find answers and solutions. But from a mental health and wellness perspective, how do we even begin to start to deal with some of this grief and some of this loss as this violence is happening and loss of life is happening? And Brandon, we'll open it up with you first.
As Mama Brown was speaking, I couldn't help but really think how common the process of grief and loss has become, especially around our young African American males. And this week, in a trauma-informed way, I try to take it upon myself that if I were speaking about such an event where someone was lost, that I said, hey, this may be triggering. And I think we have to, first really go through that process and doing whatever we need to do to comfort ourselves, right? And then also to seek support, whatever that might look like. If folks rely upon a higher power, if folks, if they pray, if they meditate, use mindfulness, becoming active to really cope, and then looking at working through the frustration and anger and other emotional states that may come about. Because, like I said, as Mama Brown was thinking, I couldn't help but really think it's almost as if these events of young African American men are almost cyclical in that they keep and repetitive in that they continue to occur. And so in many ways, it may feel like we don't get a break, but folks should be willing to give themselves a break, a time of respite, by doing whatever they need to do to care for themselves. I believe self-care is so important, and then not allowing these things to become normalized by continuing such movements as this right here, that we have such a platform, and then also encouraging folks to be comfortable knowing that it's okay to engage in therapy. I was intentional today about wearing a shirt. This is something that Jessica put out, and it said talked about fatherhood, therapy, sports, and chill. And so as a man, being encouraging to other men who may be experiencing grief and loss too, that therapy is an option. And again, I say folks need to engage in therapy on their own terms, but it is an option, and it's not a bad word. It's not a bad thing. I think the way Jessica put it, in that everyone experiences it, because life is full of like ebb and flow, right? There are sort of times when we may have emotions that are positive, and then there may be emotional states we experience that may not be as uplifting. And so, I just want to encourage folks to engage in self-care and participate in advocacy in whatever way you can.
Thank you, Brother Brandon. Jessica?
So, as Dannielle was speaking, I was thinking about the recent presentation that I did for Pitt regarding white privilege and white supremacy, but more on this subject of white supremacy. I have to talk about the fact that a lot of these things the things that were done intentionally. And there's a reason why mental health is not a big subject, right? It's because they use mental tactics to get us into slavery and into other things. Like, we were never supposed to flourish as a society, not just as Black people, but as a society the way we do, right? It was all supposed to be we listen to the master or those that were in power, right? And so just going through that history, it makes sense why mental health is not amplified. And I'm just so happy to be on this panel. And I also think about the research I've done around, those who have family members that have been killed by the police and other people. And they talk about how somebody in the family usually has a heart attack within a year. And again, to me, I feel like that it probably starts in the head. It starts in their mental capacity and whether they're well or not. And so I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, mental health is even more important than physical health, because everything starts in the mind. If you want to lose weight, it starts in the mind. If you want to, do better or be better at something, it truly starts in the mind. And so I'm just really glad that we are having this conversation, because mental health is literally everything, every day, every moment. It's not just self-care or even therapy. It's like every single moment your mood can fluctuate, right? And so I really think we have to put more emphasis on mental health than even physical health, because a lot of things, a lot of diseases and things that are going on are definitely preventable, but it starts in the head. Like, you have to have the mental capacity, you have to have the mental ability to say, no, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm going to work out every day. No, I'm going to be positive today. And a lot of our negative experiences shapes our thinking from every day. And so, and that includes, the police and everything like that. And so they also need to know that every day they need to be thinking mentally, am I addressing this situation in a way that is um, fair to what's going on, or I'm thinking about that experience that happened 6 months ago and taking it out on this situation. Like, they also have to think about their mental health every single day, every single moment, because I actually was on a response team, emergency response team, where we had to respond to all types of things. And I was kind of the mental health advocate in the middle of these police officers. And I would have to say, look, you guys need a break, step back. I'll have a conversation with the person, just step back. You know what I mean? And so it's just so important that we amplify this across the board, because I believe it was suppressed on purpose for reason. So again, thank you guys. And that really brought that up for me. And I think it's something we all need to consider.
Thank you, Jessica. And Mary?
Yeah, so I have way too many friends who have children who have died at the hands of, other young men. I have a friend in particular, she lost 2 children. She had 3 total. She lost 2 children to gun violence and a grandchild, because one of her daughter was pregnant at the time that she was killed. And, I was just speaking to a young lady yesterday who lost her son last week. And a lot of times family members don't understand mental health, because they'll try and say things to, the person who just recently had the loss, like, you're not reacting this way, or you should be acting this way, or you should be doing this. And, so I'm listening to her talk yesterday, and I looked at her, I said, I'm just curious as to, did any of them lose a child? And she said, no. I said, so how do they know how you should be acting? And even if they did, so a lot of times within your own family, if you don't discuss mental health and what that might even look like, it can be a problem. The other thing I was thinking about is, as far as policing, police officers themselves don't deal with their mental health a lot of times. They go through on a daily, and they have these losses, and they don't even deal with their own mental health. So I don't even think that a lot of times they recognize that they have difficulties with mental health. And so, I don't know if there's anything set up for police officers that they actually have to go, to see a mental health specialist. Do any of you know if that's a thing?
Well, Mary, to your point, one of my demands when I was at Freedom Corner on a hunger strike was, that public safety officers are mental health crisis intervention de-escalation trained.
Mm-hmm.
Because I agree, the same sentiment. These are human beings operating in policing, but they also have loss and trauma in their personal lives.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know, the community, the mental health community, know how they process that?
Mm-hmm.
This is a part of the non-transparency, I believe, that doesn't take place enough in the community to foster that partnership and that trust between policing and in the community.
Yeah, so, I was just curious about that. But, I think one way to be there for others who are dealing with this trauma is kind of be mindful and be present with them, and just listen, because unless you've gone through it, you just simply don't know and can't understand. So I feel like being present, and where I'm concerned, I try not to spread myself too thin where it pertains to people who have had these losses. I tend to not myself, know when to cut it off and say, enough is enough. I tend to, reach out and spread myself out. So I've had to learn to kind of reel myself back in at times, as not to, wreak havoc on my own mental health at times. So, but, along with everything everyone else said, meditation and yoga. Julius, I think you picked that up recently, yoga. Is that true? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a series of yoga tapes that I start using. And here recently, I spoke to my youngest daughter, and I didn't have any idea about this. She told me that if you go to YouTube and click in yoga for Black girls or yoga for specific, who knew that stuff was available? She said, Mom, anything that you wanted, I don't care what it is. YouTube got it, all of these things. And I'm like, wow. And so I was very intrigued by that. So yeah, YouTube. I refer clients there now to YouTube to do some yoga, meditation, and all of those kind of things. So I think all of that is very, very helpful.
I want to go back to, we started to talk about the law enforcement and police officers and some of the trauma things that they deal with, and kind of having this like different perspectives, right? Because I know there are some folks, and we might need to, if we're not talking, just go on mute so we can get rid of the echo. There are some activists who talk about, like I'll say, for example, in Penn Hills, I believe it was Penn Hills, this officer who should not have been hired in Penn Hills, ended up getting a job on the police force in Penn Hills, right? And I'm sure that he experienced some trauma from killing someone, from killing a young Black male in Wilkinsburg, I believe, right? And then however many months or years later, he applies for this job and gets hired to be a police officer in Penn Hill. So I'm bringing that up and giving that context to say, is it possible to rehabilitate an officer who does something as heinous and as gruesome as murdering somebody, particularly a white officer murdering a Black person? Is it possible to give them enough therapy or enough counseling or enough support to them where now the Black community that they are now responsible for policing is like, all right, they got trained, they got therapy, they're not going to kill any more Black people? Or is it just like once as an officer you kill somebody, we'll use the scenario, a white officer killing a Black person, you just there's no fixing that. Like, what are our thoughts on that?
I mean, I have a security clearance. SCI. I tell you one thing, they won't hire me again. If I was a felon, they wouldn't hire me. So why would things be any different for our law enforcement officers? Just that applied immunity thing that continues to kind of confuse me till today. The whole hiring of police officers and allowing them to go from one jurisdiction to the next, when most of us in our own careers could never. They will pull your license in a second for malpractice, even for breaching confidentiality, even if that breaching confidentiality is warranted.
Brother Julius, I'd like to say that I do think there is the potential for such an officer to be rehabilitated. What I believe would need to be more focused on initially is, one, to address implicit bias that comes up for police officers, as it also comes up in schools oftentimes. But since we're talking about police officers, I mean, we recognize that, you know, implicit bias is not necessarily limited exclusively to race or gender or even countries. However, in many instances, I would say that it has come up with the issues of African American young men being murdered at the hands of police officers. And I don't know that it's possible that it's realistically possible to completely debias officers. However, I think if they can recognize that their unconscious thoughts occur in a way that lead them to behave and act upon this implicit bias in the way that they do their work every day, that they could become better at doing their work. And again, in this instance, at the stage where a person has taken another person's life, maybe not realizing that it was all stimulated by something simple as implicit bias, because we do know implicit bias is influenced by culture, right? So the popular culture in America, and particularly media. So I would say that there's a possibility to educate and rehabilitate. I don't know that this person would need to continue to be a police officer, though, based upon the actions that have occurred. So if rehabilitated, might it be in their best interest to work in a way where they can inform other folks working in the field, like, these thoughts, our culture can perpetuate what we're experiencing, being around the losses of our young African American men.
Well, before I want to pull something and tease something out of what you just said, Brother Brandon, that I think is just fascinating to me. Have we ever seen or heard of any law enforcement person that has murdered a Black citizen, take that approach? They say, you know what? First say, and I feel like I know the answer to, we all know the answer to this question already. First, say like, I'm guilty. Like take that responsibility to say, you know what, I actually did this because I felt that this person posed a threat. Because I was so caught up in what I see in the media, because of my fear of not understanding Black culture, because of not understanding Black people. Like, has anyone ever owned up to that and then started to like you said, educate? Right. To me, I think that when we talk about accountability, if there was a person in law enforcement who did murder a Black person, and then they owned up to the guilt and made a true commitment to try to educate other officers or other people in law enforcement that like that if you let these things get in the way of you doing your job and doing it in a humane way, you may fall victim to this kind of act too. Like, or have we heard of anybody doing that in law enforcement? Taking up that mantle?
I don't think we have, but there's a reason for that, right? So law is set up to basically protect whatever previous laws are in place at the moment. So, and then you have the union, the police union. So they're telling you not to say certain things because then they can be liable legally and financially. So it's going to be almost impossible for that to happen unless somebody truly wants to be expelled from their career. And the people that, support the police, they can literally be, banned from all clubs, policing club. Like after that, that's going to be a lot of backlash because, I'm also a pre-law student and I couldn't decide if I wanted to be a therapist or lawyer. And so, again, when I was in those classes, they kept saying like one case can really impact another case. So the reason why they're protecting these police officers so much, again, whether they did it intentionally because of their own prejudice and things like that, or if they did it by accident, they're always telling them to not be guilty. Like, say you're not guilty because, again, that case can be used towards another case. And if you talk to lawyers, they feel like their hands tied in those situations because they're the union telling them not to do it, their supervisors, and so you can never get out of them how they truly feel. Only the therapist probably knows. And to Mary's question, police forces, they do have psychologists on board. They are supposed to utilize it, and sometimes they do get mandated to go. But sometimes those people on board that's a part of that department, again, they're kudos with everybody, and that's just not therapeutic. If I have this extra relationship with you, it might not be the best. So,
as a former law enforcement officer, everything Jessica just stated is correct. From the moment an incident happened, you cannot say a word without going through your authority. And that union, people don't know how powerful the police union is. And, your potential to say anything. That's why it takes how long does it take for one to get a police report? We talked about this. It could take months because everything that you say has the potential to affect everybody within. Y'all know I live in a city, so forgive me for the ambulance sound. But everything you have has the potential to not only affect the precinct you're assigned to, but can go up the ladder. You're talking about up the mayor. You're talking about city council. You're talking about a whole lot of players that can be involved that one incident. So it's always going to be silence first. How can we cover this up to make us look, like it's not our fault? Before you have to have a smoking gun for someone to come out to say, and even at that, you can have cameras and they'll still try to twist the narrative. And when it comes to mental health, as a former law enforcement, you have to remember, in order to reach the level of it being mandated, mental health is still one of those things that you cannot force upon anyone. You cannot make anyone seek mental health. So it would have to be so grievous. And even at that, have we heard in the news where any of them said, well, we sent so and so to mental health counseling for, choking George Floyd, or going in and shooting, Atiana Jefferson through while she was playing PlayStation with her nephew? I mean, have you even heard mental health even mentioned? I'm just curious. I know I haven't.
I haven't, and like you said, it's a shame, because when you get in these type of big departments and governmental entities, they make everything seem like you can't change it, and it's really going to have to take somebody within the department or within these entities to really just be an anchor and just go against what everybody else is saying and say, look, this needs to be a law, right? Like there's no way that somebody should shoot, stab, kill somebody and not be mandated to go to therapy. And it can happen, right? But when you get into, because, I've been in government and different entities for a very long time, they all act like this is the rules and this is how it goes. And it's really going to take somebody who really has a heart of gold and that's strong, because people are going to push back on you to try to pass that law. But it can happen. It definitely can happen.
So I'm sitting here and listening to all of us kind of give these reflections on law enforcement, and again, just reiterating that there really isn't the level of accountability that needs to be there, that should be there. And I'm also starting to think about, like, how do they even, the police departments even identify who's going to provide the therapy for these officers after these things happen? Like, I'm wondering if they have like therapists that they say, all right, you're going to work with this therapist, and we're going to make this therapist sign even more documents, than they would already need to have signed for confidentiality. Like, are they only working with a specific number or type of therapist, right? Because if and again, I know there's the confidentiality piece, but are they like, what, we're not just saying go find the therapist that you want to find, but no, we're going to recommend you to like the police force's therapist, so that we know that all of your secrets have no way of getting out to the public, right? Because you hear about a lot of therapists who like, I specialize in this, I specialize in that. I haven't really heard of a therapist who's like, I really focus on treating police officers or some of my main clients. Like, I've never heard of that before.
You had to deal with HIPAA first. A lot of it is grounded in HIPAA, and that's the umbrella that is protecting a lot of people from being able to, to have the option of being able to decline or to even talk about mental health, or they can talk about it, but it stays between you and the therapist, and we will never know. We will never know if it even has taken place. But that's something I believe that should change. We need to revisit HIPAA when it comes to civil positions.
I agree. And there are forensic therapists. They usually are hired contractual to work for certain entities. But I think the thing about it is it's different across the board. So in New York, they might have an on-site therapist, but in Pennsylvania, they might not. So like each department in each precinct is different. And so that's the other thing they need to streamline and nationalize. And that's why I'm happy that Kamala Harris and Biden is for having like a national registry of disciplinary actions. And there needs to be a lot of things nationalized, like so everybody can see it across the board, across the United States, including those mental health requirements, and also additional training that's needed. Because all you hear is, oh, well, the state of Georgia decided to do this with police officers. It shouldn't be just that state. It needs to be across the board. So it's time for them to all come together and make laws across the board. So in one state you got this, and another state you got that. But I will say some do have contractual people. Some people just use EAP like any other company would use EAP for the officers to go get help. It's just different across the board from what I've been told from different officers.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree with Jessica. I think they have their own that they work with. It's kind of like disability. I've had people come to me or, and I'll send them to a psychiatrist, to get what they needed from a psychiatrist. And when it comes to disability, they strictly want those people to see their doctor, someone who doesn't really know them, so that they can use that information, to get across, to keep from having to give away money, basically. So they probably do contract with specific psychologists and psychiatrists throughout the city, I believe. That's just my belief. I don't know for a fact.
So do y'all think that, I guess coming back to the original question, is it possible to rehabilitate an officer or somebody in law enforcement and then put them back into the force, and now they're different? They don't have that same lens. They don't bring what they brought before. Or if you have the ability, or that whatever however they want to describe it, if you kill someone, then this is just not the profession for you.
I don't believe anybody can be rehabilitated. Anything's possible. Also, you don't know what's really in their mind. That's what's hard. You don't know. You have so many of them who are in law enforcement that do have mental health, but they also have these biases, and they believe what they believe, plain and simple. So it's hard to know. But the possibilities are always there.
And it's very subjective. I mean, unfortunately, some of the killings are justifiable, right? I mean, we can't say that all police officers that have killed someone, it's in the line of duty, but, so under those circumstances, I think that you don't remove them from the position. But when it's truly questionable, when it's a killing where you're shooting someone in the back, like with Antoine, you're clearly shooting someone in the back, that's unjustifiable. When someone's clearly have no weapon and they have their hands up and they're in compliance. And in a Ronald Green case, we have just seen just recently in the news, he was like, "I'm sorry, I'm a good guy. I'm sorry." He's literally telling them who he is, and yet you still tasing him and you're ending his life. That's unjustifiable. Those certain positions should be immediately released from their position and never to be in law enforcement again. So, yeah, I think some police officers can find themselves in situations and can be cleared of it because it's clearly justifiable. And then maybe the trauma is so severe, they might not be on that particular beat. Maybe they might be traffic controllers. Maybe they might have to have a desk job. That may be the extent of their rehabilitation.
I agree. I think, to what Brandon and Mary said, I agree that I believe anybody can be rehabilitated, but you truly have to get to the source. You have to get to the childhood trauma first, starting with that, because some people don't want to take it back that far. But a lot of times our sensations, the things that we're responding to are sensations we have had before. So I'm feeling fear because, I feel that sensation of fear from when my mom or dad or somebody did this to me when I were younger, and we suppressed it. And so we really have to get to the unconsciousness, like Brandon said, and you really have to get to their true thoughts. Like as therapists, we really get to hear what people truly think. Like the stuff that is really raw and you would never even say to your own married partner, you know what I mean? The person you're married to. And so you really have to get to the root of that. And then I think a lot of police officers suffer from this thing called groupthink. So, and again, a lot of people even on Facebook suffer from this thing called groupthink, where just because there's a group of people, you guys all have the same conscious um, thing that you all believe in, you start to believe the world thinks that way as well. So you have to get to that. You have to get all past all that meat. And again, I'm not trying to justify anybody, shooting somebody in the back and using some of these traumas to justify killing anyone. Because I believe anybody who does those things still should be held accountable, right? Because, I work with people who've been in jail and things like that. And they're like, you're defending them. I'm like, no, I'm trying to give you a reason for why this possibly happened, but I'm not trying to justify it all. And if they need to go to jail for however long, they need to go to a psych ward, that they still should do that, right? And I think understanding that a therapist's role is always to see the person in their environment and to see where they came from. We're always coming from that perspective. We're not trying to justify, but I do believe most people can be rehabilitated. And I think this is where psychologists come in, because they have a better idea of who's teachable and who's not teachable, right? And I'll give an example, and I don't know if this is appropriate to bring up, but I think it's okay. So Ayanna, R. Kelly had contacted Ayanna, right? And Ayanna was like, you are not ready and you are not teachable. That's why you cannot come on my show. And that's important, because there are some people who literally think they are innocent. You can't get past that. They're not ready to be accountable. And so you gotta filter out all of that to figure out that person is truly rehabilitated. Like sometimes you do have these people with personality disorders, narcissism, and you just can't get past them. All they can do is learn to manage those behaviors throughout their life, but you know there's no getting past or through the trauma and all the other things going on in their life, and them to be in a position like that. They should never be in that position like that. And I do think there's a lot of officers that go into that field because they've been bullied. They have self-esteem issues. They're looking for power. They have narcissistic traits. They really want to be a hero. Even in the military, there's a lot of it. And so we do need to weed out those. We do need to do a better job of weeding out those people, because there's a lot of them. So.
Jessica, funny you talk about Ayanna. I can't get DMX out of my head. I'm a little salty at Ayanna and how she handled that whole DMX thing. But that's a whole nother conversation.
But I think it's valid and valuable, Mama Brown, that you bring that up. One of the things that I've realized during COVID, I watched a lot of TV and sort of vacillate between different news outlets. I won't even name them. But one of the things I realized is like our musicians, our artists, our personalities that have power and influence can be voices toward change, and they can speak truth in a way that it resonates with the reality of what our young people are experiencing, and then maybe with respect to some of the change that needs to occur, while allowing folks who may be in power, in positions of power, um, to sort of empathize with our young men and us as we grieve and we work through these things. And so two of the songs that I'll mention that sort of came up to me. One is I think by the Baby and Roddy Ricch, Rockstar, and then another song is American Reckoning by Bon Jovi. And so I encourage folks to check those out, because Bon Jovi speaking from the perspective um, of influence that they can bring about change, and rock and the Baby and Rockstar are speaking of what's really going on the front lines in the streets, and how they feel in their lived experiences. I think the next sort of phase that I trust music may take is encouraging folks to recognize how do we grow and build our capacity to live through this and not to carry this on to our legacy and next generations. And when we think about PTSD, I think one of the points that Jessica hit really maybe encouraging folks, and I think Sister Mary mentioned too, is encouraging folks to go to see a psychiatrist so that, hey, if you've experienced PTSD by a significant amount, and we realize like, hey, your cortisol levels are like 122% of what they should be, and this psychiatrist can monitor them as they're going through therapy and maybe get it to 69%, maybe like midway through recovery, and then 60 and even lower to 60% after several years of recovery, and maybe they never get back to the levels where it's appropriate. However, we see growth and we see change, and on their journey to recovery.
I think Jessica mentioned something earlier when she talked about, mental health and physical health, and how, it's just important, or sometimes more important, to see about your mental health than your physical health. And I was just thinking about how, you're right. Everything that you deal with starts in your head, and it actually starts in the brain. I started reading this book. It's called The Body Keeps Score. You guys know it?
Yeah, I got it on my bookshelf right behind me.
And so I started reading that book, and so yeah, everything starts right in your brain. So I'm real quick a lot of times to, when a person is explaining something to me that they can't really figure out, that's not where I'm at. So I'll tell them, go see your PCP and order a brain scan. Get a brain scan and find out what's happening in your brain, right? Because if there's something going on in your brain, I don't know anything about it. I can't see it. They didn't see it. And so it's best. I refer people to their PCPs as soon as I get them. If you've not seen your PCP, if you feel like there's something that's happening that you can't understand or can't explain, it's definitely best to go and get your brain checked out. So
I want to stick with this, right? We're talking about, and I know we got about 7 minutes left here, but all of us, Mama Brown, I think you brought it up. Brandon's brought it up. Everybody's brought it up, like what's happening in the body, right? And that is oftentimes when we talk about justified versus not justified, we oftentimes hear like police force and people, they try to justify these things by saying, oh, okay, well, maybe this officer had like right, they had that split-second reaction because something was happening in their body. It's almost like to take the accountability of the action and put it onto like to dehumanize it a little bit. Like the person didn't do it, but it was something that was happening in their body that influenced them in the moment to do it. So again, I know we only got about 5-6 minutes left, but like when we think about that, people, Brandon mentioned cortisol levels and having, being able to see a psychiatrist to kind of bring those levels down, and it maybe helps you think more clearly. How do we encourage people to start getting that kind of support instead of just looking at it from a mental place, but from a mental and a physical place, a mental and a physical health perspective?
I think it's through invitation. I don't think that the policing has invited the mental health community into the fold. I think it has to start right there. The collaboration. I think they're still in denial that there definitely needs to be a relationship between the mental health community and policing, not just for dealing with citizens. We're talking about dealing with personnel.
I think to that point, and I believe someone mentioned it earlier, such a union, such a convergence may unearth mind-blowing mindsets and frameworks that individuals who desire and aspire to work in law enforcement, not all, but some, and hopefully it would allow them to unpack their reasons and desires, um, and maybe some of their irrational reasoning for desiring to work in that field versus them really just being, naturally gifted and they're having talents, God-given talents that just lend themselves to that field.
Mary or Jessica, did y'all have thoughts on that?
I agree that I think inviting them to forums, even like this, I don't know if you all have had a police officer on here yet, but even something like this, invite them to get input, or to find out what their thoughts are. I know, in the past I've worked with probation officers years ago. I worked in collaboration with probation officers, and one of the things that I noticed about them, and I'm assuming it's the same for police officers, is that they see things in black and white, whereas as professionals, in the mental health field, we see the gray area. We know that there's a gray area and we actually see it. We're trained almost. And honestly, I think people who go into this field, the training is there, but you also have to have that passion. So your brain probably works a different way to begin with, coming into this field. But I think that they're not open enough, unless they maybe join forums like this, to see that there is a gray area. So it's not black or white. It's not that, oh, they did wrong, so they just must pay. There are reasons a lot of times. So I think in by invitation, like you said, Dannielle, is a good idea.
I would just add, the mandatory PCP evaluation is very important. Like we were just saying, like if you're malnourished, your brain is not going to work correctly and your body's not going to work correctly. You're going to be more irritable, more lethargic. And again, like somebody shooting somebody from behind just shows laziness to me. Like why you just didn't want to continue to run? You know what I mean? I just don't understand those type of things. So again, they have to mandate yearly PCP and yearly psychological evaluations for every single officers. So you have to be more preventative, especially when you're in an industry, when you're dealing with humans. We're not animals, we're humans. And I think sometimes when you're in an industry for so long, you start to dehumanize people. And there needs to be more community boards where it have an expert panel to say if somebody can go back to work or not, just not in the police. Like police and the police is the first thing that needs to stop happening. Like the community boards need to come back, and they need to have a psychologist, psychiatrist, everybody, every profession that is not connected to money, not connected to these individuals at all, to say this person can go back to work. This is what they need to be doing. And so I think if we get some of those things in place, we can weed some of these people out, you know what I mean, really quickly. So.
Thank you, Jessica. So we want
quick, Julie, didn't the Allegheny County just evoke or brought back the policing oversight committee?
They did. But that was just Allegheny County, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying that's a start. But wouldn't that be nice to have that across the board? Because to your point, Jessica, police have, and something as little as, let me tell you, when you say things like, remember with the George Floyd situation, people were saying citizens arrest.
Yeah.
Nobody listened to that, but it's clearly a law. Making a citizen's arrest or evoking your citizen's right goes on deaf ears. So that whole oversight piece is so needed because, like you said, policing, we get nowhere. And we're going to keep having these conversations. We're going to keep dancing around this circle until we take accountability out of their hands and putting it in an oversight, whereas it's not just them being able to cover up and police themselves. I don't know what they doing outside. I'm gonna go back on mute.
Thank you, Mama Brown, Brandon, Jessica, Mary. Thank y'all for spending some time with us and having these tough conversations. You know, we know it. These conversations are not black and white. They're layered. They're complex. And y'all being experts, we just wanted to engage with y'all, get your perspective. We got some ideas on what to think about, you know, how to support ourselves and how to zoom out a little bit, and maybe some advocacy work that we can do and we can try to activate as well. But we appreciate y'all. Where can people catch y'all, stay in contact, buy merch, get services? Let the people know.
Well, so I'm on Psychology Today, and apparently I'm also on some list that is floating around on Facebook somewhere. I have not seen this list. I just hear about this list from so many different people that is out there, and it has my Psychology Today information. I'm almost afraid to put it out there because the calls don't stop. They don't stop. And right now, unfortunately for me, I just simply am so booked, and it makes me really, really sad that most therapists and people in the city that I know, you know, African American especially, are so booked. I send out referrals all the time, and it's, you know, it's hard to do, but I am on Psychology Today under Mary Ringgold, so all of my information is there.
So I'm on Facebook. You can anybody can add my Jessica Gurley LCSW Facebook page. My business Facebook page is Social Work Consulting and Counseling LLC. If you want to contact me for any type of presentations, you can call 412-204-6934. My practice is currently full as well with a waiting list, so I apologize. If you're on Instagram, at tritherapy_SWCC. And I just want to leave with one message, because I know we mentioned Black on Black crime on here as well. And I really want us to truly understand that, you know, as Black people, people talk about this crab in a barrel mentality, but one thing I want us all to look at and walk away with: crabs were never supposed to be in a barrel, right? And so, of course, we're going to fight our way out. And so let's blame the problem, not the people. And I know it's hard to say that, but this was all done purposely, and we just got to keep loving on each other so we can get past all the other things. I hope we can love each other past our pain.
Right. I hope you put that on a t-shirt. Love
each other past our pain.
Yeah, that's
good.
And the first one too, blame the problem, not the people.
Yeah.
You know, what's the brother's name? One of the quotes I love, Cornel West: "You can't lead the people if you won't serve the people." I'm gonna adjust the second part. You can't support the people if you won't serve the people. He says you can't save the people. I don't know about that save term. I think people get that twisted, but you can't support the people if you won't serve the people. I'm Brandon Phillips, and I thank you both for having this. Shout out to One Hood too. And I can be found on LinkedIn, Brandon Phillips, if you want to reach out.
Thank you, brother. And Jessica and Mary, do you have a final thought, Mama Brown?
Well, I was just going to say, yeah, I have a master's in counseling psychology, but don't call me. Everybody had made it quite known. I will consult with you, but I will not counsel you. I need all my tools for me right now.
That's right, and that's okay. That's okay for us to use your tools for yourself sometimes. I think that's a great place to end. Like Brother Brandon said, we don't always have to be trying to support and save other people, you know, per se. Work on yourself, love on yourself, and we appreciate y'all spending some time with us, and we'll see y'all next week.
I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you both very much. I appreciate you allowing me to come, and I'd love to come back again at some point. And I really enjoyed this, so thank you very much.
Thank you. And
Thank you.
you want to hear something funny? I tried to get an appointment with Jessica. Jessica said, "Mom, around my book. I can't help you."
Sometimes it's like that. Sometimes
No, it was all in fun. It was all in fun. I love you all. I love each one of you all. Thank you for coming to the show. Thank you, Julius, for facilitating this.
Of course. Thank y'all. We'll see y'all later.